not optimally at all triggering protein synthesis, and the normal rate of protein breakdown continues to occur, leading to the loss of muscle protein synthesis, size, and strength. Now, what we've seen so far with blood flow restriction, with many different studies around the world, not just coming out of a single camp, is that it appears to be one of the most optimal exercise, let's say, or external stress modalities that does increase muscle protein synthesis. But it does so via some different mechanisms. Again, none of it is essentially 100% proven in any one direction, but we have a lot of good evidence to support its use and its safety, especially in the clinic environment, bearing in mind we use the appropriate clinical tools, right? So what we've seen is that BFR has an affinity to increase muscle protein synthesis fractionally in a group of elderly individuals who are way more at risk of anabolic resistance by about 46 to 56%. That right there makes the world of difference to an athlete, and let's talk about why. In a study done in 2012 by Takarada, they took a group of ACL individuals and split them up into a group that had BFR and a group that did not have BFR. And obviously both groups had overall decreased levels of activity and started to express some of the early signs of anabolic resistance, right? So the group that did not use BFR and completed 2 weeks had a drop of about 20.7% in cross-sectional area or measure of muscle. The group that had BFR had about a 9.4% drop in cross-section area. Now, if we look at the difference between these two, this is almost looking at, on a gram per basis, our BFR group was able to retain and hold on to much more muscle mass during that period. Now, on a follow-up study that looked at now 2 weeks to 16 weeks, where we were looking at strength, because remember, we recalled that the loss in cross-sectional area led to a drop in strength. The groups that did not perform BFR had a 64% return in strength at the 16-week re-eval point, whereas the groups that had BFR had a near 91% return in strength. Hey, Nettie. In BFR. In strength from those groups. So we can see here that directly our ability to maintain proper healthy amounts of muscle protein synthesis can directly impact strength. And it does so because when our muscles undergo protein synthesis, we don't only lay down contractile units, we also lay down structural units like troponin and tropomyosin, and we also lay down regulatory proteins like titin and myomesin. And those are the important ones aside from just the contractile ones for strength, but the other ones are important because they allow us to essentially store or increase overall mitochondrial density. So at the end of the day, although we're only looking at strength in relation to cross-sectional area, I'm gonna flip over back to this way, guys. There are studies that show us a maintenance of also endurance, right, can be seen with these groups that perform BFR. All right.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good, don't worry. Got one of the coaches that just walked in. It was all quiet in here now. They're, oh no, Mario's giving an Instagram live. Let me see where that's at. All right. So we'll cover some other studies later on. Almost gets us to the half-hour point that are going to look at endurance, right? Because when we're talking about endurance or we're talking about VO2, we're specifically going to go into the role of the heart or the delivery mechanism, the role of the vascular or peripheral vascular system, and then the role of muscle and the uptake. There's many instances where athletes can have sufficient amount of oxygen delivery, but they don't have a sufficient amount of mitochondrial density to even use that oxygen in the Krebs cycle to maintain overall performance, right? They'll switch right over to the other side. That's going to be on the next video that I'll put up, but we're also going to talk about some key things on the next video. So we've got some endurance, but we're going to address cell swelling, the importance that it plays with muscle protein synthesis, and really what it is and how it happens in relationship to low oxygen and lactate. And that'll just be a good segue into the endurance studies that we'll look at. So I appreciate you guys checking out and some of you chiming in. I'm gonna switch around real quick and just see if there's any comments, but I'm gonna flip the camera on a forward-facing position so that I can read them if you guys have any. All right, because now you don't have to look at some reverse language. So any questions out there? I got a couple minutes before I've got to hit my workout. Waiting for questions. If there's any topics you want me to cover in relation to power production, specific strength studies, specific protocols, right? These are all things that we educate in the Owens Recovery Science BFR course, and really dive into the science behind those. Because the IRBs are getting so difficult to pass nowadays with BFR, we're finding that it is becoming quite relevant that the individuals that we certify through Owens Recovery Science that utilize the Delphi system, which can track with a Doppler that individual's characteristic limb occlusion pressure, that is basically what's becoming now the gateway for passing through an IRB study. So again, what does that mean? That means that we're getting more and more closer to standardizing BFR in a way that can give us these outcomes spot on. We can measure this stuff, okay? This year I'm going to be participating with continued research at Belmont University, specifically into BFR. And we're going to be diving into some really cool topics. And we just finished our IRB, put it through, submitted it. And when we discussed using BFR, we were discussing the exact unit we were using, and that every individual is going to have their own individual limb occlusion pressure, and we're going to be taking a percentage of that individual's limb occlusion pressure. Because again, the studies are all over the whole place, right? We got studies showing knee wraps, studies showing voodoo bands, well, not really voodoo bands, all knee wraps. Studies showing kind of pneumatic or blood pressure cuff devices, and people are getting benefit with it. Awesome, cool. But in the medical field, even as a private practice owner that I have my own practice and I'm at a network, I don't have to deal with any of those guys. I want to make sure that when I put a stamp of approval on that person that I'm working with, and I make the claim that this is going to benefit them, and we can track their strength, we can track their lactate thresholds with some other pieces of equipment that I have, we can look at movement and screen it to a high fidelity, that we're doing things right. This isn't about selling snake oil, guys. BFR is legit. It is going to change the complete trajectory of rehab and sport performance later down the road. It's already doing it now, but we're finding really safe ways to do this where it requires you working with a medical provider to do it, because you are going to be doing things to your body that, hey, you know what? A long time ago, I was comfortable with wrapping my arm or my leg with something because I didn't know enough. Now, the more that I know, the more I can not unknow. So that wraps up today's session. Hope you guys took something away from it. I will be saving it and posting it on YouTube like the last session, but I'm doing them now in this non-vertical setup so it looks better when you watch it on YouTube. So hope you guys enjoyed. You can direct message me if you have any questions on that end, if you didn't want to post them here to the group. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. See you tomorrow.